Great. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Webinar Wednesday. I'm Carly Andrews. I am the Senior Project Coordinator for the North Dakota Brain Injury Network. We hold these webinars every other Wednesday from 1:30 to 4 Central Time. CEUs are available for social work. So if you would like those, you can request those after. They will be up by this recording, probably by Friday at the latest, so in about 2 days. But yeah, I have these scheduled. I have today's, and then we have December 14th and December 28th, and then I'm working on next year, so keep coming back. Yeah, I'm very excited to have Lynne Becker back. Lynne came, it's been a little while now, but in Explain Power of Patience. So if you haven't watched our old one, I will throw that in the chat for you too as well, just so you can see what and where the link is for that as well. But Lynne's gonna kind of, re-update you too a little bit. But yeah, I will just let her get started, and thank you all for coming.
All right, thank you, Carly. Hi, everybody. And I see that everybody's on mute, so that's okay. I'll just talk, and if they have a question, they'll just let you know. And I'm going to do a quick little overview about Power Patients and our progression. And then I'll do a little bit of a walkthrough of a registration as well. And I am going to gear it to providers, since there's a little bit more provider numbers here, but both patients and providers and caregivers will be addressed. So let me admit some folks. All right, so I'm going to click start, and I think you can all see the screen, right? Okay, perfect. So there's no traumatic brain injury, TBI data warehouse until now. And what I have created as Power Patients is the first TBI patient-centric data warehouse. And it's pretty impressive and important. Impressive because we need this data warehouse in order to design clinical trials. So let me bring us forward. Why this patient-centric data warehouse is so important is because this area is grossly understudied, and it's going to be the best way in order for us to move forward and accelerate clinical trials. First, the why me? Like, why am I doing this? I am a mom, and I therefore am a caregiver of my two daughters that suffered a traumatic brain injury, and my youngest also stroked. Prior to launching the company, I am a biostatistician and an epidemiologist, and my career path has been in clinical trial design and management. And my expertise became in recruitment because I was able to really understand how to work with clinics as opposed to impose upon them. So I've had great success with recruiting patients onto trials. One of my notable ones is with the Gullah Geechee men, which are the slave descendants in South Carolina, as well as a recruitment trial for Weight Watchers, which is why Oprah bought Weight Watchers. So nice little claim to fame, and I'm very proud of them and happy to discuss them afterwards. My expertise became in designing big data systems and telehealth applications. I started in corporate, but I went on into academic work, and there many academicians know you follow grant money. So I didn't have an expertise any longer in just ophthalmology. I was in behavioral health, I was in cancer, I was in your rural outreach programs. I've done a lot until TBI, which found me. I had not studied that. So I, like many people, was very green to the space. So TBI, traumatic brain injuries, are a public health crisis, and the CDC is finally recognizing that. In 2020, when I launched the company, the incidence, or the number of new cases annually, was 1.8 million in the US. This year, 2022, the cases are now 2.5. So awareness is rising. And when we study things epidemiologically like this, as awareness becomes dominant and present, these numbers are going to mirror or mimic an epidemic-like proportional increase. It may or may not be an epidemic, but the numbers are really increasing and jumping. Totally in the US, that's over 7 million cases, and globally, almost 70 million. So it's a huge crisis. And these numbers far exceed cancer cases, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, all the things that we hear a lot about. So what is the problem? The problem is there's a lot of knowledge gap. And why is the knowledge gap? because of its understudied status. There's no diagnostic test. There is one, sure, I'll back up a little bit. Abbott has a blood test, but it's hit or miss. It's not able to be used in all applications. Therefore, without diagnostic tests, we also do not have standard of care. Some doctors prefer vestibular therapy. Some doctors prefer rest and wait. Some doctors prefer vision therapy. It just depends upon what that doctor really does like to do. I'm not saying that's wrong, but it's not the best way to get a patient on their pathway to recovery. The problem is there's a multiplicity of symptoms. If you think Rubik's Cube, 43 quintillion ways to solve the Rubik's Cube. And I think sometimes with all of the data and the symptoms and the people and the emotions that are coming forward with brain injuries, it may feel like we're trying to solve a Rubik's Cube. So all of this boils into knowledge gap. And this costs our taxpayers, let me minimize this here, over $76 billion. This is all from the CDC. So this was in a report to Congress. So it's time that we start really addressing this problem. So how am I addressing it? Is through Sally. Sally is our solution within Power of Patients. Sally is a virtual therapy dog, and she's cloud-based. So when we use the word app, a lot of people will say, oh, do I go to the Apple Store or to Google Play? No, it's all cloud-based. And it's agnostic across any environment. And what we're really focusing on doing is bringing the voice of the patient forward into the clinic or forward into the EMR system. So from the ground, we push up. So Sally lets people identify the symptoms and the triggers that exasperate or even improve their symptoms be tracked. And we did it with a collection of all the published intake forms that are out there when we first created her. I took them from the NIH, from the FIRE platform, from the VA, various universities that my daughters were patients of. So I tried to make sure I had a good representation of what their intake forms looked like, but knowing that this was very understudied, and let me give you the barometer of that. When I launched the company in 2020, there were 1,500 clinical trials registered at the FDA for TBI. Just this past week when we were doing our report with MIT, there's 1,700. So it's growing, that's good. 1,700 now today. And when you compare it to oncology, there's 75,000 clinical trials. And oncology is the number 3 most studied indication. So that discrepancy is what leads to the knowledge gap as well. So by being able to really categorize based upon a symptom profile of a patient is the best way for us to design clinical trials and to improve the therapy and the recovery for the patients. So that's what Sally does. We use all of these platforms. I combine them into one. I allow for personalization at every step of the way, meaning if we didn't think about what could be a trigger or what could be a symptom, a person can add their own. Now, a patient takes all of this and from the bottoms up, they can push up to the doctor, meaning they can invite a doctor or any provider or their grandmother. It doesn't matter who. The patient will be in charge of their data. So the onus, the demand becomes on the patient to then share and invite with a provider. So the provider doesn't have to do anything except an email invitation and look at the data. I tried to work within providers' 15 minutes to see patients, plethora of data, and what do I really do first, so that we can really focus and develop trend charts to at least show and guide this is what's occurring now. So we serve from the bottoms up patients, providers, and industry, all so that we can accelerate clinical trials in this space. So how does Sally work? It's very, very simple. Like I said, we take all the patient's symptoms and triggers. It's structured and unstructured data as well as narrative data. Each patient acts as their own control. We apply a variety of machine learning techniques. I can say AI, artificial intelligence, but because this is so understudied, we don't need the tens of thousands of patients yet. What we need are the 50, 60, maybe 100 of all the patients that will map upon the same symptom profile. So we're developing word banks through our what's called sentiment analysis, we're also doing some machine learning to start algorithms about what should you do first. And I've been very fortunate. I won some awards within the Boston entity here, and MIT has become my partner and are helping us analyze the data. Last year, in this machine learning process, we identified two very prominent signals in the data. The first signal was fault. Is the patient at fault for their own condition? And those that were not at fault, those that were truly victims of something, whether it was a car accident, domestic violence, assault, and these are all people that we have, whatever it was, if they were not at fault, their anger and toxicity scores were so severe that they were frightening. We're talking Columbine frightening in some cases. And so what that made the provider do, the doctor that was the chief medical officer on our team, she took a step back and she said, I would absolutely order services differently if I know this. I've got to get that behavior therapy under control, because we all know what we do when we have this self-talk and this negative monkey chatter going on in our head. It exasperates other conditions, that domino effect. That's the one signal. The second signal that boiled to the top was vision and vestibular, kissing cousins, right? Vision therapy should probably be done first, based upon what we saw on last year's data analyses. And it actually held true for this year's analyses as well. But what that means is we added vision last in all of our medical domains, which we have 6 various medical domains and then subcategories within each one, which you will all see. But what that meant was that, okay, if we can get their vision and or vestibular under control, perhaps the other symptoms would actually go smoother or go faster. Could we perhaps accelerate the recovery of this person? So those were the 2 findings from last year. And at the end of this slide, I will share our recent findings. But this data all goes into a real world data warehouse. We started with TBI. This summer, we released a stroke app. We do have COVID. We're looking at adding Parkinson's next. And then this is what can be pushed into EMR systems and things like that, which we're working with a university. We're actually licensing to one university exclusively, and then we're pushing our information into the Epic system at another university. So I created this, as I told you, telehealth and big data. I created this with the end in mind, that I want this to go into systems to augment existing EMRs, not replace them, but to really help. Okay, it's really simple. It honestly takes 2 minutes for a patient to register. When the patient creates their account, everything is either checkboxes, a little bit of narratives, and everything is customizable to them. And this last screen that you see is what the daily tracking looks like. We do an overall, how are you feeling? We have goal setting up here. We let people journal throughout the day so they can track continuously. And just to also share, because Carly, we're doing our update here, we have power users, we call them. We have about 24 people, and we have well over 800 patients, all organic. And now we're onboarding huge clinics at a time, and state systems as well. But we have power users that are using this well over 400 times a month. I mean, I'm blown away with how much they really are trying to decipher their own condition. So, of course, you have people who sway in and sway out. That's how we want it to be. We want Sally to not be an imposition, but an augmentation to every aspect, patients, providers, as well as industry. This is the stroke that we worked to add this summer. And we work with several different stroke groups. We do a very similar intake where we ask when was their stroke, any kind of information about the stroke and how many strokes they had. Most people don't know, but the re-stroke occurrence rate is close to 30%, which is a frightening number. And if you don't have a good handle on it, how do we make sure that it doesn't happen again? We have them confirm their stroke details. We have them identify if they had any kinds of symptoms at the time. And then we ask if there are any risk factors. Again, we just released this, so we don't have tons of patients here, but they are growing in numbers. Then what we did is we kind of changed things around, always trying to teach patients so that there's a collaboration and engagement with providers. And we color coded regions of the brain. And then these are the domains within the brain. So if we want to look at our cognitive condition, this is actually purple, it doesn't seem to show up on the screen, but there's our cognitive condition. Our sleep conditions is related to the front part of the brain. And in each one, we have these different subcategories, always leaving an other section if somebody wants to add that as well. We are bringing in, I just approved the last design. When we talk about getting hit on the head or where did their stroke occur, we're actually going to have a 3D model that people can actually turn and rotate and precisely click. I was hit here, I was hit here, all the places from their shoulders on up that they may have been hit. So that was the animations that I was just referring to. So the whole goal is to let Sally guide patients and to become involved with them as they are tracking. Again, this is a little bit more of a patient view. This is the daily tracking. And as you can see, we create trend charts over 5 days, a 3-day one, goal setting so they can work with any provider. We allow them to add more symptoms. They can pause symptoms. And then this is a summary report over the 30 days. We're toying with the idea if we need to include 60 and 90 days, perhaps in a categorical format like this. But that's a lot of data to look at. So we aren't really convinced that we need to do that. But we also include the symptoms and any kinds of comments. When patients have increases, as you can see, these are going up. We're releasing a remote therapeutic monitoring feature this January. When these numbers go up, there's a change of at least 10%. And if a provider has been invited to come look, we can send an alert to a provider. And the reason that is important is that in one of the presentations we did at a conference this summer, we were able to show that a patient was experiencing this cyclical pattern up and down with her heart condition. The doctor was blinded. It was just a 30-day study, just a case report, an N of 1. But the doctor believed the patient was doing better, but the patient's numbers, their metrics were bouncing all over the place. The point being, had he known this, had he seen the data at week 1, he would have changed, taking the patient off this therapy and onto something else to control it. So this is where the power of having this real-time information can really help. We have a caregiver, which we are now renaming to a care manager view. And what we learned in working with providers as they started to onboard their clinics is that while a neurologist or perhaps even a vision doctor, an optometrist, they might not see the patient the 2 and 3 times a week. They might see them in the next 4 weeks or 6 weeks or 8 weeks, but the therapists who actually do the real hands-on work are seeing the patients much more frequently on a weekly basis. And so that person is the one that really wants to see the tracking. So we also allow a care manager or caregiver to dually track for a patient as well. In working with a provider, as a concussion clinic, sports clinic, they said, my athletic trainers email me the reports before my patient comes in. It would be nice if I could have them track. I could have the patient reporting one thing. I can have the athletic trainer reporting their impressions, and that gives him a world of information. Patients, and I speak from experience with my daughter, they're simply will say, yes, I'm fine, when in reality, they're walking into walls. So you really do need an unbiased set of eyes charting and tracking these patients. So I used that concept, based upon my clinical trial research work, I brought that forward into this so that if there is an opportunity or people want to have it, we allow them to do this as well. We also built in this care manager view, the option to upload, the option to enter a medical record number. So you can then push this file, this data into your medical record number as well, or medical record system as well. And then in one of the grants that we won, the challenge was because of COVID, is there any way that we can create a secured online messaging? Well, we already had the one way, meaning a patient could send the provider an email. So all we had to do was add in that provider acceptance. So it's very, very simple. Everything is hyper secure, just so you know. We do invite the healthcare provider, the provider, or it could be the office manager or whatever it is that you deem necessary. The email is entered here and boom, we send an invitation. So the patient initiates it, the provider accepts it. And because of HIPAA reasons, you do have to fill out your name, your date of birth, your email, because that's how we're able to connect. Zip code, it's kind of the same registration page, and I'll show everybody that as well, that all people must register with, but it's minimal, it's like 7 questions. And then once you're connected, you're allowed to send messages. So here it is, alternative therapist. I click on it and I write a message and boom, it's gone. You know you have a message because this will turn green. I come in here and I have my message, hi, I'm testing. In this case, I can mark it as red, I can delete it, and we archive messages. So the most recent ones are here on top, but we archive them. So if you need to look at them, we'll pull them up through a file share program. Now we also added, realizing patients may be seeing multiple providers that are not necessarily all in the same location. So a patient is allowed to invite an infinite number of providers into their system so they can look. Now, I cannot let provider A see what provider B is talking to their patient about. However, my goal is to be able to get that feature approved through the FDA and HIPAA so that even if you're not within the same system, providers can collaborate. Think of like a virtual grand rounds so that duplicative therapies are not being assigned, or you might say, oh, this patient is coming in here, but I can wait and see it. Whatever it is that makes it easier and more accommodating. In my personal experiences with my children, what was happening, providers were just overwhelming their system because everybody has to be seen 3 times a week, this and this, and it was just forcing my children into these regressive statuses. They were in bed for days on end. So it's something to be cognizant about. We don't have that magic pill to get everybody better. So how do the therapeutics work in order, the functional therapeutics, in order to get the people moving in that positive track? So that's another feature to bring forward. The provider view gets a little bit more detailed. So here it is again, the messages. Here is how I was discussing that 10% increase. Whenever you see the numbers coming up, 10% mathematically, we use that a lot in clinical trials. We can change that percentage. It doesn't have to be 10%, it could be 30%. But what this does is when it goes up, if a provider wants the alert, that alert will come in. And if you have days of people trending upward, that would be justification to solicit a telehealth call. So that's where we're trying to help you not only focus on the patient, but increase your revenue. It might be easier to get them on a telehealth visit as opposed to getting them into the visit. So these are just things that we're trying to think that how can we help expedite a practice? The social determinants of health, these are the triggers. And so when you hover over these on the live version, the pop-ups will tell you precisely what is it in screen time that is aggravating this person? What is it in the wellness or the health category that is aggravating them? So again, more specific provider views. This is another one, it's a vision specific one, but you can see this is 1 week of a patient tracking and the patient is down and up and down and up, up, up. Every time we have these X's, Sally will require the patient to fill a SOAP note, if you will, some kind of a comment. What the heck happened? And in this case, she knows what she was doing in order to relieve her headaches. And in this case, she didn't. But when she brought this chart to her doctor, and these are triggers again, so you can cross-check where things are going awry. She brought this into the doctor. Her headache was exasperated by the color orange. And then she was driving and she notes that while I'm driving, I'm okay, but all of a sudden the headlights came on and I had to pull over to the side of the road. So it isn't that her headaches were only caused by close work, it was caused by the color blue. When she showed this to the doctor, he referred her to an optometrist who said, oh my God, you need blue blocking lights, which is very common with people with brain injuries. But until they could really discriminate this, the patient would have gone up and down in these terrible, having to pull over on the side of the road. Thankfully, she had the presence of mind to do it, but not everybody does. So this is the power of taking the patient's words and turning them into charts and trends. Okay, so our whole thing is about partnerships. Carly knows this. We do have the Brain Injury of North Dakota, the network, as one of our referral groups in there. Our bigger goal is to decrease the knowledge gap, and we are bringing in clinical trials for survivors. That's the ultimate. So I mentioned MIT, and we're a part of the ALAB program. And so once you're in, you get to stay in. And this year, our challenge was, I need to calculate an injury impact severity score, because what does it really mean for these closed head injuries to be told, oh, you're mild, oh, you're moderate? Again, very subjective. But is there a way to mathematically assign some kind of a score? This came from, I lost my job when my daughter was injured, and after a few years, I went back to work. And this time I went back to work for the Department of Defense, and I was managing the TBI portal for them. I learned of therapies for my daughter that I had not even heard of before. And they worked miraculously in helping her even get to the next step. But when I first started, there was a symptom profile of a soldier on the wall. And I swear it was my daughter, like right on down to bowel habits. And I just stared at this wall thinking, what in God's name is the similarity between my 17-year-old daughter who was hit by a soccer ball and this soldier who experienced a IED wave blast, a significant blast. But what was so common, and it really haunted me, and I kept coming back, the only thing that seemed to make sense was injury pathway. And I didn't know what to make of it, but I just kept gnawing at that. As I was reviewing data within Sally, I was starting to identify patterns. Let's use falls for the first example. Trip and fall. People fall off the roof of a home. People fall off of speeding horses or those all-terrain vehicles. And I started thinking, these people are all put into a fall bucket. Yes, they fell, but a fall is not a fall, is not a fall. And if you fall from your own natural height, that's one gravitational pull. If you fall off of a roof of a house, that's a different gravitational pull. And mathematically, we are able to calculate those discrepancies. And then I realized if you're on a speeding horse who is spooked, you can actually now involve partial derivatives, force, mass, acceleration. Acceleration of that horse is the second derivative to the mass. And we started really diving into that. So MIT, the brainiacs, all loved the concept, and we dove into the data, and we actually are able to calculate what we called an IISS, impact injury severity score. And it went through a lot of modeling, k-means, principal component analyses. We used some sentiment analysis, some different machine learning. We weighted the correlations. We surveyed providers who are in this space, asking them to rank and weight the betas, and then up came this unbelievable model based upon where your head is hit. And we took gender into consideration. Age at the time of injury is a very, very high loading variable as well. So the bottom line is we are now able to calculate this IISS, and we compared it against two truths, because as we all know, and I mentioned, this data is very subjective. It's all we have to go on right now. Yes, there are products in clinical trials for eye tracking and blood and so on and so forth, but there's nothing out there that is, there's our gold standard. So we still rely upon the word of patients. So we used our barometers to position or anchor, if you will, the regression models against coma and loss of consciousness. And it's actually frightening how many people do lose consciousness. And so knowing that that's a very clear yes, no. Yes, I was in a coma. No, I was not. Yes, I lost consciousness. No, I did not. We use those two truths, if you will, as our grounding variable, and we were able to model against those. And what we were able to determine are these buckets of people that I had alluded to earlier. And we can say, for whatever reason, we don't know why, you should have been knocked out, you should have lost consciousness, or you should have been in a coma. What is your protective measure? We don't know, but we know you profiled precisely like that person. So therefore, you have a danger or you better be careful score that is very, very high. And the model was able to predict this out for the coma group 92% of the time with their accuracy. And with the loss of consciousness group, I think it was like 78% or maybe 75% accuracy. Again, very, very high models. This is an N of 800 plus patients. So it's not a small N, but it's the start. It's not definitive. We'll start, staggering and stratifying our data by various other categories. So it's really exciting about what we're able to do. If we're able to say this to people and really impart some awareness, like you really, really skirted death, or you really skirted some massive injury, I think that weight will also illuminate people to be much more careful. Because we also know that reoccurrence or a second or third concussion becomes more and more likely once you have your first concussion. Lastly, I think this is the last slide, is a group of testimonials. And so these are people that have really been impacted by Sally. Kelly Campbell, she is one of our biggest ambassadors, and she's a stroke survivor. And she used Sally in the very beginning, before we even had a stroke feature, but she was able to identify, and she has a rare condition that caused her stroke. She went from being super healthy at 42 to debilitated down her left side of her body on long-term disability. But she would get admitted to the Shepherd Clinic, the rehab hospital, every time her migraines started to appear, because that was her signal. And she felt like a sitting duck. She'd be there for a week waiting for a stroke to happen. And she would leave, not brokenhearted, but without a stroke, but going, dear God, now what do I do, right? A bit of a panic sets in. So by tracking, she brought Sally's reports to her doctor, and they were able to identify her strokes, her migraines became prominent and dominant when hurricanes were hitting the city of Atlanta. And so with the next one together, they made the decision that she was going to not go to the hospital. She was going to stay at home. She was going to be calm. And she never had another stroke. And knock on wood, she still hasn't. But it illuminated her how she could better prepare herself and keep herself out of the hospital and not feel like a sitting duck. She still has issues, but she can at least deal with it and not be losing a week of her life. Charlotte Sweeney, an amazing woman. She wrote me a true long, long letter. And I don't have enough room to put it here, but we need all the help we can get. She is a physician. She is a cancer survivor, and she's a caregiver to her husband with multiple TBIs. And she saw this as a factor that could help really take the loss of words, take the loss of any kind of communication out of the practice, the problems of practicing as a clinician, and really help focus on what the person is experiencing. So she was very, very excited about what we brought to her. Beth Ansel, former PhD director at the NIH, and authored many, many stroke rehabilitation and TBI rehabilitation programs and articles, simply said, this is exactly what we need. We need to bring the patient's voice back into our practices. And then Kit Carmichael, a very, really incredible practice out in Oregon. He calls it integrated eye care, but he has a general practitioner, a speech, a PT, and an OT practitioners all within this one group. And what he liked is that we're breaking through the silos of care, right? And I would have to carry binders with me to make sure the doctors were on the same page for my daughters. And it wasn't until I showed them these trend charts did they even honestly listen to me, even though I come from the space. So it's very frustrating, I think, on all ends. But the more we can help focus, personalize, and simplify the process, I think we have a shot at getting people the care they need to get better. So recapping, what we're doing is we're helping patients personalize and advocate for themselves. Their words do become data, and we really are here to support, empower everybody. And that's it. You can register for our newsletter. We can register for Sally. I can show you a demo. I can take a pause here, Carly. If there's any questions.
For sure. Does anyone have questions for Lynn? Do you want to see a demo of how to register? Is that what you mean by demo, right? Or kind of like go in and not necessarily register, but just see what the portal looks like? Are you guys interested in that?
Yeah, I mean, I can, let's see, I can do either one. I can, let's see, I'm trying to think, do you guys, yeah, why don't I go in and show everybody what it looks like to be on the dashboard. Registering is pretty straightforward.
So the one thing I just wanted to mention, when you do register, there is a button that says referral. You can drop down to us, to NDBIN. So then we can reach out someday to Lynn and say, hey, can we get the data on so-and-so if we wanted to? I mean, right now.
Yeah, let me show you that as well too. So that's easy enough. So I'm going to go back to the screen share. And let's see, go here. And you're seeing an email confirmation, but I want you to see the Power Patients homepage. Is that up there, Carly? Okay, great. So everyone, like I said, it's an app, but it's a misnomer. People are like, oh, do I go to the app store? No, it's just cloud-based, right? So you don't have to download anything. It is truly agnostic to mobile, tablets, desktop, doesn't matter. So when you go in, if you're a returning user, and you can set this on your home screen, and we send reminders, so it comes in your email. We are going to add SMS features next year as well, so you can text to Sally. But you would log in if you're a returning user, or register if you're a new user. And this is what I want to show you, what Carly was referring to, because we create partnerships with brain injury groups. And again, this is all you have to do to actually create an account. And this is pretty much, I think the doctors and the providers, I don't think they have ethnicity or veteran status. We do this for the patient's information, particularly because of the clinical trial outreach. But so in the referral group, when you go to brain injury group, you'll see North Dakota BIN. So you can literally click on that. So Carly and her team knows how many people are using this. And this is important because the state of Georgia, they did an audit in their brain trust, and this legislator, it's on their books. They have recommended that Power Patients be the state's data collection tool. The state of Hawaii has contacted us to build their neurotrauma registry for their TBI people because it's a state law, but nobody is collecting relevant data. And the National TBI Registry has partnered with us and is leveraging Power of Patients to create a full national registry. So there's a lot that is happening, and we are trying to do this with all sorts of stakeholders. So you go in and you fill it out. It's pretty straightforward, but for the purposes of time, I want to kind of just walk through this a little bit. These are two different screens I have here. Oh, I'll just stay on this one here. Same person. This is me as a person who went in and tracked. If I'm having issues, I would just turn on my dark mode, and we did that because patients told us how much it hurts their eyes. I am tracking, I already tracked for today because I did a demo with a stroke group, but so I don't have anything else to add. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to back up a day so I can track for this day. So you can see, you can't go in the future and track, but you can go backwards. So I think my injury I put in started in 2002. The symptom I'm tracking is light sensitivity. So everything is from 0 to 100, 0, no problems, 100, really bad. And we use each person as their own control. So they don't know what they scored the day before. And we do that intentionally because of my research experience. We know that deltas or changes over time are very, very important. So today I'm going to say I'm having a pretty good day. All right, so I could click on that. And now I'm going to go to my light sensitivity. It's not too bad today. So I could click on here, or I can just slide it down. It's whatever I want. And I click save. And then I have ringing in my ears, and I'm going to say, yeah, that's really pretty bad. So I'm going to click save on that one. And then we have people track social determinants of health. And I should probably go in and create an account now that I'm thinking, Carly, because you didn't see this. And we also added therapies. We asked people to tell us what kind of therapies they may have tried, which is very important with parts of the algorithms that we're developing. So social determinants of health, we ask people to tell us, what did you do today? You don't have to map it to anything. That's what Sally does. So I'm a female, and I'm going to say I'm on my menstrual cycle, but I seem to be stressed out a lot too. Travel triggers. Yeah, I have been on the bus a lot today, and screen time. I seem to be doing a lot of video calling, and I have some schoolwork going on. And environmental triggers. That's high temperatures. It's also bright sun, and I'm having to deal with large crowds. This is where our social determinants of health stopped before, and we didn't have all of these categories. But as we keep going through our data and we see what people answer, we had well over 700 unique symptoms and triggers that people had entered. And so what we try to do is collapse them so that it becomes more universal. And so this dietary is brand spanking new. We've noticed that people have a decreased weight or an increased appetite. So this is all coming from what the patients have identified. This is a brand new category as well, situational triggers. This family and this computer, these are our number one triggers. They go back and forth all the time. And people will really expand upon this, which again, this is where this information can be very useful for some kind of a therapist. If there was something else in here, lost my job. I mean, whatever it's going to be. Again, every single thing is customizable. And then I would click save. Now, when a person starts, so now you can kind of see how my trend charts are starting. Here's my 5 days, my 3 days. This is my social determinants of health one. So you can hover over them, like I said, so you can see this, and this is all what providers see. Let's say I am tired of tracking light sensitivity, or I wanted to add something. I want to add something on vision, and I want to add dry eyes. I can click save and add. So now I've added dry eyes, and I'll just say there's this one here. So I've added dry eyes to my repertoire of symptoms, and I can pause them, which you saw as well too. So that's how that works. So we can allow people to take symptoms on and off, because as we've learned, TBI symptoms and stroke symptoms, some of them seem to come in and come out, right? They aren't always the same ones. So that's why that's important. We allow people, those power users, this is where they can journal multiple times a day. They can edit or create goals, and we want them to do that with the provider. So that was the first example. So now I have a second one. You can change your notification preferences. This is where we put our videos that we do when we host various speakers and things like that. You have to verify your email. That's the only reason why that's there. But here's how simple it is to invite my healthcare provider. I click on this and I type in help patients.com, and I send the invitation, and that's it. That is literally how easy. And again, I can do as many people as I want. And so, oh, this is an existing one that belongs to a caregiver account. I can't make a caregiver a provider. So we do use help. So, but basically that is how it looks. And then that provider would go and get the message. And I would click in here. I don't have any messages with this account, but I would click in here, and this is where I would see them. So are there any questions, or do you want to see some more? I can log into, I can log out of this, and I think we have a provider account. If
Yeah, let's see the provider account if you have time. I'd love to see that side of things too. You just a lot of providers on. So
okay.
I teach a living life fully after brain injury class, and we
Mhm.
class 2 is brain injury and memory, and it's a lot about tracking symptoms and triggers and all of that. And so I do talk about power of patience because I think it's so much slicker than like the old school mood logs. So it's a curriculum that we have, you know, it's got an old mood log that they have as a worksheet. And I'm like, you guys, I think it'd be so much easier if you went into here, but
Yeah.
like
Well, we can set up, I have to apologize. I don't have a provider account. We moved them over into our test domain, and I logged into the live account. So I apologize for that, but I can send pictures or something like that to everybody. So that on me.
So does the patient then link you as the caregiver somewhere on their end, I suppose, is how that.
What was that?
So the patient on their portal or their dashboard, they link you as the caregiver. Is that what happens? Is that how the information?
Yeah, so what it would do is, I don't know if it's going to allow me to go back. Yeah, it's going to keep me in this loop here. So let me just close out of that one. What it's going to do, if I was to log in here, we had provider at Power Patients, patients and caregivers, but we moved them into our test environment so we wouldn't have to keep deleting them out of our real production work. And so I actually should have logged into the test up here, the secured system up here, and I forgot. So we have a provider account, and I'm happy to send this to you guys as well. You can play with it all you want, but basically, if you come from here and when you go in and you register, I might be able to do it through my Lynne Becker. Oh, now you're challenging me, everybody. Let's see if I have my Lynne account set up here. Lynne at Power Patients at Gmail. Oh, all right. Cross your fingers. I have a feeling this is not going to work. Yeah, it's the wrong password. Sorry. I can't do it. I'm failing you. I apologize.
I think that was a great overview, and yeah, I'm gonna throw your last one in the chat too, just in case anybody wants to check that one out.
Okay.
Today, maybe didn't. But yeah, those of you listening online or that are watching later, you can go to our website and scroll down. So it was June 2nd, 2021 is when we had Lynne come the first time to explain this. Was just getting started kind of then.
Yeah, we were. Yeah. So yeah, a lot of changes since then. So yeah, certainly we can follow up. We have little videos, 1-minute videos for providers. We have videos for patients. We have videos for caregivers. And so I can send all of that to you all. It doesn't cost anything. We get and we can also show you how patients, we have a app so they can actually walk through on the flyer, and they can see, what do I do here, here, and here. And we're building one for the providers as well. So a provider, you can either bring a clinic in on as a care manager, or you can bring in a clinic as a provider, or you can have a clinic as both. They just have to have unique emails. So we have a clinic in Maine. They have like 50 TBI patients a week, and we're doing a case report with them. So we're helping them analyze their data because they discovered this incredible solution for people with their stress hormones using some beta blocker drops. So, this is all the stuff that we need to get out there into the community so providers can know, because not everybody can travel for vision therapy. Not everybody can get the glasses while you're doing vision therapy or whatever. So there needs to be repertoire of solutions so that providers have access to it. So this doctor just stumbled upon these beta blocker drops to help with the migraines, and the people are able to go back to work. So they were not even working. So I mean, and North Dakota is rural like Maine. So, but what they want to do, they have vision therapists as well as PTs, and it's either an OT or a speech, but they're all sharing one office email as a care manager. And then they are inviting the provider, the doctor who sees the patient every 6 to 8 weeks, and they're tracking, and they're having their patient track. So now, just like how that first provider concussion clinic sports guy said, I want my athletic trainers to track too. That's how I figured out how to do it, was in listening to him, what makes sense as a practice. And then I pulled a bunch of practices, and if they can have this unbiased, they will never share. So you really can have it very independent. And then these people can invite the providers. So you get all different views, all very simplified. So that's going to be, I think, a game changer for providers.
Definitely. Yes. I love it.
Yeah.
Anyone else have any questions or anything for Lynne?
The chat. Let's see.
That's me, probably. I put the.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to check. Okay. Yeah.
You're quiet today.
I know. Come off to your videos. Come on, you guys. Or girls, guys and girls.
It's pretty, reason I'm pretty quiet is pretty interesting in trying to get this to register in my brain, all this information you've been sharing. It's so great to hear.
Thank you. Yeah, I know it can be a lot. I try to go slow enough. I try to fill your heads with ideas of how could this help me. And I think by sending out the follow-up material, Carly, like the little videos, and I think by showing, now that we're able to calculate these scores, right? That was my first goal. Can we find signals in the data? And we are, like, mathematically, it is all there. And that's where it becomes indisputable. There's a grant we're going after. It's kind of nice. Harvard called me, which is really kind of nice, right?
Me too. Awesome.
So, you know, because who's Lynne Becker, right? I mean, who, right? I'm just me, but I'm me with a passion to fix what happened here, right? And I can tell you story after story on the public health programs, how people unified to force the hands of the FDA. One of the classic cases most people don't know is when HIV was rampant in the early 90s, the homophobic community was like outraged. People didn't know what to do, but the FDA, who takes way too long to do stuff, really didn't even have a fast track program. So what the men HIV community did was they all assembled upon Washington and they marched just like back in the old days. And they actually were the ones who created the fast track approach for the FDA. I mean, that's huge. And that's what allowed for the Moderna vaccine and things like that. When this feature could be potentially integrated into EMRs. Well, guess what? I'm doing it. So it's really, so Tia, I got it. You got to come off speaker. So the university that I've been working with, it's a doctor that he's young. He's a non-surgical orthopedist, and he sees all the minor league sports teams. And he was the one, actually a caregiver brought Sally to him early with, like when I met you, Carly, and he called, he said, what is this? And I said, oh, it's a free app. It's like, what? So we talked a lot, and that was when I got the idea, okay, this is what he needs. How can I build it and keep moving forward? So he said, hey, I need to publish. I can't get advanced care unless I get published. So I said, okay, well, we'll help, right? That's what, the more we can tag team with providers, clinicians, help them publish, it's a win-win for all. So I said, okay, let's start putting your patients on. We met with the head of all physical therapy at the hospital as well. And, their doctors are, no offense to the doctors in the group, but they're sometimes funny to read. Like I'm thinking, oh, they're going to hate this. Like, we were sitting there drinking coffee and they're ripping me apart. And I'm like, no, this. And I come from the space, so I wasn't not expecting it. But I'm just like, well, I don't have anything else to show you or to tell you. And they looked at each other and they're like, we love this. And I'm like, you do? I'm like, you do? I'm like, I thought you hated this, right? So they're like, God, we need to make Sally a prescription button in the EMR. And so Tia, your question is, when will it become available? So I filled out all the paperwork. They just sent me another round, because when you go into EMRs, there's 2 tricks I've learned. One, you contact Epic and it's a nightmare, or Cerner, and it's even a worse nightmare than the government. And every hospital has, Carly's laughing because it's true. Every hospital, and listen, I made the world's largest healthcare database with the US government, and it's a nightmare. So I speak from experiences. Anyway, each hospital has their own unique Epic or Cerner system. They're not the same. So what you have to do is you have to find a doctor inside the clinic or the hospital, inside the walls, and they have to say, I would like this app. And then you start filling out the paperwork. And it's really simple. Because this data stays out here, you don't have to worry about corruption and holes and things like that. And so once you can get the app as a prescriptive into the EMR system, so the patient is required to do it, like go fill this prescription, go use this app, then we just, because you can have a medical record number be brought in from the patient side, we can push it into the EMR system. So we're coming from the ground and we're pushing up, and that's where it augments the EMRs. So if you want to, can I pop my email in the chat, Charlie? Okay. If you want to contact me, I will work with you and figure out how to do it, because each hospital will be different, or each clinic will be different.
That would be wonderful. I'm not a provider, but I am a case manager, and we work with people obviously that have a whole bunch of different stories that they tell their providers than what we really hear from them. And
Yeah.
so I think it would be really beneficial for every EMR to be able to have this patient self-report data. But yeah, awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So if you can, please contact me, because case managers, the state of Massachusetts, I taught a 3-hour course with them, and it was all about that as well too, was so that they didn't miss conditions. So that's the other thing. So, we actually we licensed Sally to a university, and we built the whole body out for them. So we actually have it collecting diabetes, cancer, musculoskeletal, I mean, you name it, the whole body. And the case managers, when they saw this, they're like, holy cow, this will make us have way more probing questions, because you can present, just like, again, I don't want to keep, talking about my children, but it's common. I thought I was an anomaly. You come in and the child or the person will say, I'm doing fine today. And they could be. But a week ago, they were an absolute basket case, right? But they don't think about bringing that in. And that's where this 2023, what we want to do, and Carly, maybe we should do this with your group too, is we're going to do a series of lunch and learns, and we're going to bring patients and or caregivers, or doesn't matter, both, and providers together, and have them work in dummy accounts together so they can see and have that relationship. And so Tia, maybe case managers should come as well too. So
Yeah, for sure.
okay.
Yeah.
Any other
even from my own, I've Crohn's disease, so, and I go to the just even when I go to the dermatologist, I keep track on my phone, because you forget, you get there and you freeze up and you're like, yeah, I guess I'm fine, or I don't have any spots I want you to check, or I don't know. So it's nice to have a spot for people, because those brain injury symptoms do get so, yeah, and I'm all about the data and finding patterns and all of that. And so this is right up, my alley, and I just love this. And
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, shoot, I don't remember what I had for breakfast. Come on.
exactly, yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Awesome. Well, anyone else, any other questions or anything else for Lynn?
All right. Well, I'll do a follow-up and just kind of send some little videos, some of the other stuff for you, Carly, and then you can distribute them to the group. And Tia, please email me. So I'm happy to work with you. If we can do it within one small clinic, that would be ideal. And then we can expand very easily.
Yeah, let us know if that works out. We'd love to sit in on that if we can, or help out with any of that.
Okay, awesome.
Mhm.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone.
Awesome work.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, as soon as we get the MIT stuff, it's being presented Friday. So we're going to actually go after a publication, but we're going to start doing some external conference presentations about now what does the data really show, so we can actually do it for continuing ed courses and things like that as well. So yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.